What's good, fam? Teacher Eddie back with another reaction. What was found inside Hitler's last will and testament? That is today's lesson. So a lot of people that I've spoken to have asked me, like, what happened after Hitler's death. Most people have no clue that Hitler actually did leave behind a last will and testament, which he wrote shortly, actually a few minutes really, before he and Ava Braun got married in the bunker. And I've read excerpts from his will, which also included political statements, how Nazi Germany should continue after his death. He also broke up who would be in charge now, etc., etc. So Infographics usually does a great job with these, so I'm very excited to get into this and possibly learn something new.
Hitler was an incredibly rich man when he wrote his last will and testament in the bunker where he would take his life. He had amassed a fortune from the sales of Mein Kampf, business deals, and private investments. But who got...
And a shit ton of looting also.
Hitler's money?
I also appreciate Hitler's mustache in this. Like, they gave him the full Tom Selleck mustache over here. Like, they didn't give him the Hitler mustache. They're like, nah, man. Let's give him the old Tom Selleck over here. Fucking Magnum P.I. over here.
After his death. What else was in his will? And could there be a massive fortune hidden away somewhere waiting to be found? As
He's like, don't be sus, man.
During the end of World War II,
don't be the
Hitler
imposter.
Committed suicide and transferred his power to other members of the Nazi regime. But before he did this, he wrote a will. There were 3 copies of the will distributed.
Yes.
And all that might have been lost to time if it not had been for a British intelligence officer named Hermann Rothman. He was deployed to Germany to interrogate high-level Nazi officials for information. While on assignment, he spotted a suspicious man dressed in civilian clothing. Rothman decided something didn't seem right.
Something didn't seem right. He was in civilian clothing. What is this nonsense?
And that the man
wanted
further investigation. He discovered the German man was carrying falsified documents. It
what do
turned
you expect him to be carrying like a Nazi flag around, being, hey, I'm suspicious?
Secretary for Joseph Goebbels, the man who was made chancellor.
I'm sorry.
Lorenz was the press secretary for Joseph Goebbels.
Joseph Goebbels? Gobble, gobble, gobble. Was it Turkey? Goebbels? Goebbels. Joseph Goebbels. Goebbels. Jesus. It sounds like what Mr. Pac-Man's name would be. His name is actually Goebbels, just so you know, because that's what he does.
the man who was made Chancellor of Nazi Germany by Hitler just before he committed suicide. Sewn into one of the seams of Lawrence's jacket were 3 documents. They were a final political statement written by Hitler himself, a document written by Goebbels, and Hitler's will. As you might expect, the political statement was wildly racist against the Jewish people.
Yes.
Hitler blamed them for his own shortcomings and for causing Nazi Germany to lose the war.
He's angry as
thus
fuck, man. Look at him.
reinforcing what a lunatic Hitler was. But what was in his will?
It's easy to write off, people like Hitler as lunatics and everything, but I mean, it's also unfair to history and the understanding, the sociological impacts, the other impacts, historical impacts, to just write off somebody like Hitler as a maniac or insane. Of course, no sane person people would think would do the things Hitler did. But to just write him off as being insane and crazy, he was still, arguing for everything that he had been arguing against before the war, during the war, in Mein Kampf. The last sentence of his political statement was something like, and Germany is going to keep on fighting the good fight, this struggle, and that history would see Germany and the German struggle. He kept on using the word struggle, right? Even Mein Kampf, it translates to my struggle, right? He looked at everything as Germany prevailing, struggling to come out from underneath, the boot of World War I, the Jews. So the last sentence was, that Germany would continue the fight. He laid out a whole political system with Goebbels and other people. Dönitz would be the president of the Reich. Goebbels, I believe, was going to be the chancellor, and I forget who was going to be the minister. But the other point was he removed Himmler and Göring from the party for betraying him because they were trying to cut deals with the Americans. And finally, he said, and they will prevail against the scourge of the earth, which is global Judaism. So, yeah, to just write that off to insanity, simplifying it too much.
Who got his fortune? The first thing Hitler talks about in his will is his new wife, Ava Braun. Up until right before their double suicide, Ava and Adolf were not yet married.
So happy.
Ava was the aide to Hitler's official photographer. They first met during a photo shoot of the film.
I didn't know that.
Hitler
That's
and
interesting.
Braun developed a relationship, and when opportunities presented themselves, spent time alone together. Hitler explained in his will that he was too busy to marry, and that was why they did it right before their deaths. Some scholars...
That's a good bit, man, baby. I would love to marry you, but I'm busy as all hell, man. I'm juggling all these things. I got a war on 2 fronts. It ain't easy.
Have their own theories about why Hitler waited so long to marry Braun, but according to Hitler's will, at the end of April 1945, the two were joined in matrimony. Hitler goes on to declare that Ava Braun made the decision under her own free will to commit suicide with him. Whether this is...
I just love the little hearts in her eyes. He's like, hey, guess where we're going on our honeymoon? I don't know, Adolf. Where are we going? Hell, drink this. And she's like, absolutely. And I love that he put in his will. He's like, I'm just letting you know she did this of her own free will. Nobody forced her to do anything. Just letting everyone know she drank this poison on her own and then asked me to shoot her. Come on.
Is true or not, we'll never know.
Come on, Tom Selleck.
Hitler claims this to be the case. In the next part of his will, Hitler discusses what will happen to his belongings and money. He states that everything he possesses and has any value should be given to the Nazi Party. However, Hitler writes it in a way that seems as if he doesn't own much of anything. This is far from the truth, as he had amassed a fortune from the sales of Mein Kampf, as well as through royalties on images of himself and business deals. Hitler continues by saying that if the Nazi Party...
So
Hitler was making a tremendous amount of money from the sales of Mein Kampf. I think during his lifetime, I think Mein Kampf sold something like 10 million copies. But yeah, in his will, he was like, man, what do you want from me? I'm dirt poor over here.
He does not survive, that his belongings should be given to the state. And if the state does not survive, then all is lost and his wishes are no longer necessary. Hitler does not make specific arrangements for his paintings and pictures, which he had collected over the years. They were to be given to Linz, Austria, the town in which he grew up. There he also...
I'm surprised he didn't declare all the art schools in Austria to be shut down and then just replaced with his paintings. Austria will only recognize the paintings of me, Adolf.
Also wanted the art to be displayed in a gallery for the public and not as a private collection. It's in the next part of the will that Hitler mentions his money, yet he still does not acknowledge the massive sum he's accumulated over the course of his rise to power.
I love the fact that he was against, Judaism and everything else, but he's writing his will out like a Jew would. Like, oh, what are you talking about? I ain't got no money. It's like that old joke, son goes to his Jewish father and says, hey, Dad, can I borrow $50? And the father says, $40. What do you need $20 for? Right? I mean, talk about triumph of the will over here.
Power. Hitler
it's okay, I can say
Bormann,
these things.
His private secretary and Nazi
I'm
official,
Jewish.
full legal authority to make decisions based on his will. Hitler states that everything of sentimental value and the funds necessary for a modest life should be given to his brothers and sisters.
Actually, I think Göring was the one that was supposed to be the minister of the Reich. Dönitz was going to be the president, basically replacing Hitler. Goebbels, Gobble, was going to be, I forget what his position was. I mentioned it before. But either case, those were going to be like basically the three heads. Göring, Goebbels, and Bormann. But of course, all three of them die within a few days. Goebbels and his wife commit suicide in the bunker, also poisoning their two young children. As does, I'm not sure about, I think it was Dönitz and I think Göring. They find his body, Bormann, they find his body like in the 70s, but then they eventually ID him through DNA. So obviously none of this happened because, number one, Nazis end up losing the war and surrender a few days after Hitler's suicide. And then, also they're like, man, fuck this will, man. Plus this dude's talking about, I ain't got no money.
However, it would seem his own family was not quite as important as someone else. Hitler goes on to say that, above all, Ava Braun's mother should be taken care of.
Oh,
he
damn.
was more intentional in including her directly in his will than his own family. This seems odd, but then again, Hitler was an odd man.
Well, I'm pretty sure he was like, man, sometimes family be like that, man. You'd be like, man, fuck these guys, man. I'm gonna leave everything to my mother-in-law. Must have a really good relationship. It's like Hitler hated the rest of the world, but he loved his mother-in-law. There you go. That is fucking odd.
He also put in his will that of all his faithful co-workers, particularly his secretary, Frau Winter, should be looked after as well. There is no...
There is actually an amazing book and a documentary written by her. It's very, very interesting. So I would definitely check it out if you're interested more about it, because she had a very close relationship with Hitler. Obviously, she was his personal secretary, but she's the one who actually took the initial dictation of his will. It was really early in the morning. He woke her up and he said, hey, I need you to, I'm going to dictate something. Most scholars believe that Goebbels was also involved in the writing of the will and the political statement based on witness testimony, because there were witnesses who signed the will. Witness testimony from people who were there at the wedding, because again, the wedding takes place shortly after he dictates his will, that Goebbels was very much so involved. Also, the language used in the writings, a lot of scholars who are familiar with the writings of Goebbels and Hitler pretty much agree that it wasn't Hitler alone who wrote the document.
Specific number or amount of money each should receive, which means it was up to the discretion of Bormann. However, we know that Hitler's fortune was massive, so if his last will and testament was followed, there was a hefty sum of money that could have been distributed among the parties described in the will. Hitler concludes his will by saying that he and his now wife, Ava Braun, would rather escape disgrace by choosing death over being captured. He also included that once he took Ava's life and then his own, their bodies were to be immediately burned. He signed the will given in Berlin, 29th of April 1945, 4 a.m., A. Hitler.
Yeah, the interesting thing, in the will, he does not actually name Ava Braun by name. He just refers to her as his wife. But along with the documents, they also found the marriage certificate which was, it took place the same day. So obviously he just put 2 and 2 together because he had never been married before that.
Below his name, the 3 witnesses of the will are signed as well. They were Dr. Joseph Goebbels, Martin Bormann, and Colonel Nicholas von Bellow. It was not a very long will and did not contain many specifics, but it did give us a glimpse into what would happen to Hitler's belongings once he took his own life. However, this begs the question, what really happened to all of Hitler's possessions and money? The surprising thing is, we aren't entirely sure. We know for a fact that Mein Kampf made Hitler very rich. By the time of his death in 1945, the book had sold about 8 million copies and had been translated into 16 languages. It was estimated that Hitler earned around $1 million per year in royalties. Some of this money was used to buy his alpine retreat, named the Berghof, which was located near the town of Berchtesgaden in Germany.
Oops, sorry, okay.
Hitler must have spent
sorry about that. I just wanted to pause it for a second. I hit the wrong button. But I did not know that part, that he bought his Swiss estate with that money. Like, why the fuck would Hitler actually pay money for that and not just take it? That's what I find interesting. Much like they're like, oh, he amassed all these paintings. Yeah. It's not like, it's kind of like when I did the Battle of Castle Itter, and they said, oh, they handed the castle over to the Nazis. That's like saying that, oh, I just handed my wallet over to the guy who was holding me at gunpoint.
Estate, so Hitler must have spent a significant amount of money on it. He also felt he had enough money that
Wait a second, did Hitler just have pink shoes on?
Significant amount of money on it.
Well, I'm colorblind, so I can't tell, but those look kind of pinkish. That's pretty dope, man. I like that, Hitler.
He also felt he had enough money that once he became Führer, he forwent the salary associated with the position.
That's kind of like Trump, because Trump. I think Trump turned down the money that you get. Salary for being president.
In Mein Kampf and other writings, Hitler talked about his earlier life in poverty and hardship. He was a struggling artist in Vienna before fighting in World War I and the publication of his influential book. He talked about how he overcame all odds to succeed and made enough money to live comfortably.
He ain't lying. I mean, nothing there is a lie. A lot of people like to whitewash the history and make Hitler out to be some kind of bumbling fool, and that he was a coward during World War I, which could not be further from the truth. Again, it's this whole painting of, Hitler into, for lack of a better term, no pun intended, painting him into, just like writing him off kind of as this crazy, little guy with, these aspirations, but obviously fueled by his insanity, and because he didn't get into art school, and he was a bumbling fool as a kid, and he wasn't that smart, and he was a coward, really, and he didn't have a military mind, which is an injustice, not because I'm here to say, hey, man, this was a great guy, we need to celebrate him. Of course, he should burn in hell, and my family suffered throughout World War II, especially my grandmother, who lived through the war in Russia. But to not repeat that history, to understand it, which is like yesterday I was saying, I'm not interested in, talking about or teaching like specific battles, which I know a lot of people like, but that's more trivial knowledge and for like history buffs, right? I don't like when people say, oh, I'm a history buff, just like you. No, I'm not a history buff. I mean, I am a history buff. I love, history and the trivial knowledge, but I'm a historian who studied for a decade, right? And got 2 postgraduate degrees in these studies because of the critical thinking aspect of it. So to simply write off people as insane, warmongers, everything else, it's a disservice to learning from those mistakes so they do not get repeated. And that's what bothers me a lot.
Once he had money, it was reported that he spent millions on gifts and payments to buy the loyalty of politicians and business.
That's true.
The payments would allow him to be able to call in favors and make others dependent on him.
Exactly.
Obviously, this would not have been possible without a massive
basically like a pimp.
Once he became Führer, Hitler no longer thought of there being a divide between his personal money and that of the Nazi party. He would use funds from
because he thought he was the party
to buy property, art, and make business deals. It's also well established that
he was like Palpatine. I am the Senate.
Before becoming the Führer, Hitler was a tax evader. He was in debt
That's-
to pay
yes.
taxes until he rose to power. And once in
And he
power,
was
the
like,
money continued to flow
"Wait,
into his pockets.
I owe you money?"
Big
No, I don't think
businesses
so.
would make huge contributions to his efforts, so they could secure military and infrastructure contracts. It's estimated that from the time he started as chancellor until his suicide in 1945, Hitler received over $3 billion in corporate payments. So what happened to all of Hitler's money? Is it still out there in the world waiting to be discovered?
No.
In his will, Hitler
was
says
looted.
he wanted all his property and wealth to go to the Nazi Party. However, we know that the Nazis were defeated, and therefore the will defaults to the next beneficiary, which was the state. In a way, the state did get much of Hitler's wealth. At the end of the war, the Allies gave the copyrights of Mein Kampf to the Bavarian government. There was still a lot of potential money that could have been brought in by owning the copyrights to the book. However, the government banned any reprinting of the work in Germany, and therefore those funds stopped coming in.
Yes, so I've mentioned this a couple of times, and even I myself made this mistake for a long time in spreading the myth that Mein Kampf was banned in Germany, that you can't, get it anywhere, it's not allowed. Germany had nothing to do with banning it. And a lot of people believe that Hitler never left a will, and so his fortune and everything was given to the Bavarian government, right? Because he was declared a citizen of Bavaria or whatever nonsense out there. But in either case, the rights to Mein Kampf were given to Bavaria by the Allies as everything was being split up. And the Bavarian government decided they didn't want to profit off any sales of Mein Kampf. But you could still get, used copies or copies that were already in circulation. So that was never banned. Nazi propaganda and memorabilia was banned. You couldn't just walk around the streets waving a Nazi flag. But it was never illegal to own a copy of Mein Kampf or to get it on the secondhand market. And with, like they said, 8 million copies sold up until his suicide, there were plenty of copies to go around.
Both Hitler's Berghof estate in the Alps and his apartment in Munich were also given to Bavaria. So it would seem that a lot of Hitler's assets,
But not before it was looted. There's actually a great, they devoted an entire episode to it in Band of Brothers. It was an HBO special about 20 years ago. Absolutely amazing. I think it was 8 or 9 parts. It was an 8 or 9 part miniseries. It is I could not recommend it, any more than I have in the past. But if you haven't seen it, please, you will not regret it. But there's a whole episode devoted to the Allies going to all these estates that these high-level Nazi officials had in the Swiss Alps. I talked about it also in the video I did on the Battle for Castle Itter. And when they got there, of course, there were a lot of very valuable artifacts, paintings, statues, but they were expecting more, so they were kind of disappointed. But also at the same time, they did loot a lot of what was in there. So I am not surprised if a lot of this, these fortunes that Hitler and other Nazis had weren't just loot. A lot of soldiers did loot all this stuff. Jewelry, gold, paintings, and smuggle them back into whatever countries, Britain, America, France, etc., etc.
did actually go to the state like he wanted in his will. However, most of this was in the form of physical and intellectual property. What happened to the expensive art collections and actual money? There are accounts of Hitler's house in the Alps being bombed by Allied forces and then looted by the soldiers. It's possible that much of the artwork that
it's the
Hitler
other way
collected
around.
was stolen during this time. We also don't know exactly what was in Hitler's house when it was raided. We know the Nazis liked to create secret passages and bunkers. If there were such secrets within Berghof, perhaps the soldiers who found them were able to get away with the money and other valuables.
Oh, absolutely. Yes. Yeah. So I don't want to make it sound like it was, the Allies were bad people for loot. I mean, look, man, hey, get what you can get. But yes, a lot of German officers, soldiers, Nazi officials, they got away with a lot of very valuable things. Over the years, a lot of things have been recovered in the decades since the war and returned to some rightful owners, but it's only a very small percentage of what was taken by the Nazi government during that time.
In 1952, what remained of Hitler's Berghof house was blown up by the Bavarian government, to keep it from attracting tourists and people who might have still shared Hitler's ideologies. With the destruction of the house,
I love like a bunch of hipsters are gathered around his Swiss Alps estate. Like, hey, Tom Selleck and Goebbels. Oh, lead us. Show us the way, Daddy.
That might have been hidden within would have been lost. Hitler's apartment in Munich is still there, but it's been converted to a police station instead of a residence.
Wow,
so
I did not know that.
The Bavarian government did in fact receive some of Hitler's possessions as per his will. However, when trying to follow the actual money and where it went,
Tom Selleck
things become a bit
mustache, man.
unclear. Since his fortune was so intertwined with the money of the Nazi Party, it's possible that much of his wealth was spent on the war effort at the end of World War II. That being said, it is possible that some of the money and valuables that once belonged to Hitler were smuggled out of Nazi Germany by deserters and officers trying to escape Allied forces.
Yes,
it's possible. However, we may never know how much of Hitler's fortune was disseminated this way. Hitler knew he would lose World War II, and rather than being tried for his crimes, decided to take his own life and that of his brand new bride. Just before he committed suicide, Hitler did write a will.
Wait, they were all happy before. She had little hearts in her eyes when she was drinking that poison. She said, oh, yes, let's go. Where are we going? We're going to the seventh circle of hell. I hear it's really great. My friend Judas told me all about it.
And in it he laid out what to do with his possessions, but he was somewhat vague about the extent of his actual wealth in the document. It would seem that most of what Hitler owned went to the Bavarian state. However, his fortune is not completely accounted for. Perhaps some of Hitler's money and valuables are still out there waiting to be discovered.
Probably. I mean, there's probably something.
Everything he had and owned was lost or plundered during the war that he started. Now watch, how rich was Hitler? Where did all...
Interesting. That was very good, man. Bravo to Infographics, man. Yeah, so that was Infographics right there. So they did a really great job with that. Again, this is a question that comes up a lot, and a lot of people don't really, know whether, Hitler left a will, and it's not really a question that comes up a lot, like Atticus Finch said. And Atticus, thank you so much for the super chat. Really appreciate it. But, a lot of people don't really think about this or wonder about it. And this is the type of history, again, that I love doing. There's, many popular subjects on YouTube, and a lot of people, kind of trample over to kind of, cover the same stuff. Whereas I like talking about the more obscure stuff. And again, whether it gets views, doesn't get views, I'm just going to keep on doing what I'm doing, and hopefully it catches up. And again, I also take, a lot of the videos that I do as requests from the comment section, as well as my Patreons and everything else. But this was a really good video by Infographics. I'm actually a big fan of Infographics. I know they're not as popular, at least on my channel, as ERB and everything else. But, they do have fucking, 10 million subscribers on their channel. Also, I put a link in the description. I put a link in the description for documents that they discussed in this video. So it's a part of the Eisenhower Presidential Library. So it's translated so you can see the original German documents, but at the same time, you can see the translations into English, as well as the correspondence in Washington about these documents. So it has Hitler's full, final political statement, where again, mainly he places blame, of course, on the Jews. He says, that the cause was still righteous, and that the German people, he has no doubt, will continue to fight the good fight, or as he kept on referring to it, like I mentioned previously, the struggle, right? Mein Kampf, my struggle, and as well as his will, also the formation of the new government after his suicide, including, again, gobbles, as well as Bormann, who he made the executor of his will. But again, a will, much like, oh, piercing, my man, John Alonzo, man, thank you so much, man, $50, that's crazy talk, bruh. I really, really appreciate it, man. That means the world to me, man. Like I said, you guys are, really helping out, because the brother's struggling right now. And plus, my man remembers me from back in the day, apparently. Back in the O&A days, man. I haven't thought about Opie and Anthony in years, son. But yeah, I used to be the Gonzo Styles. I know that probably makes sense to like 2 fucking people on YouTube. But anyway, so check out the link in the description if you're interested in actually viewing these documents and seeing what they say, and the marriage certificate and all that stuff. It has a lot of like basic information as well on Hitler, on Ava Braun as well. And again, it's these little tidbits and these little things that really, get my juices flowing, so to speak, covering things that a lot of people just never heard of, like, the Battle of Castle Itter, or General Smedley Butler, and the time that American businessmen tried to overthrow the American government, Franklin Roosevelt specifically, and basically start their own kind of similar regime to the Nazi Party, because you have to understand one thing. At the beginning, the Nazis and Hitler were not viewed as they would eventually be viewed by the global community. In fact, in America, Hitler had a lot of supporters and supporters of great influence, like Henry Ford, the DuPont family. And these businessmen got together and they wanted to overthrow Roosevelt and basically stage a military coup. And they tried to recruit a very famous general at the time with one of the greatest names ever, General Smedley Butler. And General Butler was like, if you see, I did a video on him, you can look it up, the plot to steal the White House. So I did a whole original video on it because, again, a lot of people don't talk about that. And Butler was like, oh yeah, really? Because he talked like one of those 1930s, fast talking guys. He's like, yeah, you want to do what? You want to overthrow the government? Yeah, sure, I'm with you. Just give me all the dates. And then he ran to Congress and was like, guess what these motherfuckers are trying to do? But again, these were very wealthy people who had a lot of influence throughout the country, so nothing really came of it. Originally, Butler was labeled as a lunatic and all these different things, but he was also eventually vindicated when the first House committee was formed in order to review his claims, and they found that yes, this was true, but it's just nothing ever came of it, and the newspapers never really retracted all the negative things that they said about Butler. But yeah, you got to remember, Hitler was also on the cover of Time magazine. Hitler was quite a popular figure at the time in the mid 30s. Up until the war starts, of course. Then it's like, hey, fuck this guy, this asshole. Look at him, and plus he's crying poverette over here. I ain't got no money. What you talking about? He's writing a will, and he's like, yeah, I'm leaving all this shit. I ain't saying any amounts though, because hey, it's none of anybody's business, man. I'm broke as a joke, son. But let me just quickly go through the chat here, see if there was anything of interest here. Mr. Lizard, that was a great reaction. Thank you so much. Again, my man John Alonzo, thank you. Atticus Finch, thank you as well. You deserve so much more. You're welcome, Teach. I really appreciate that, man. My brother Ken, my friend Judas, exactly, man. That's why you want to take a vacation, you got to get recommendations from your friends, man. You got to get, hey, man, I know this guy Judas. Yeah, Iscariot. Exactly. Yeah, he's in the final level of hell. This was very interesting. I honestly never thought about Hitler leaving a will. Exactly. That's why I love this type of history. Everybody looted. Everybody did war crimes. That's war. Well, I mean, Not everybody, but yes, a lot of people did. Nazis making secret bunkers. Crazy talk. Yes, exactly. Could you please watch the rest of Sabaton's No Bullets Fly video? You missed the rest of the story. I did a reaction to the song. I really don't need to watch the history background of it, because I am the history background. I gave all of the deets and facts. So in all honesty, I know a lot of people are like, hey man, why don't you watch the where the guy explains the history behind it? I'm like, that's what I fucking do in the video. No offense, but you know. Let's see. Every married couple got a free copy of the book Mein Kampf. Yes. Don't commit until you're about to die. Brilliant. I'm telling you, man, you know, people shit on Hitler and everything, but hey man, he had some good ideas. And actually, speaking of Kin actually, we were having a conversation and we were talking about, you know, Hitler and World War II and how everything came to be. And that really, you know, it's World War II that gets America and the rest of the world really out of, you know, the global depression, because the depression didn't just strike the United States at the time. It struck, you know, the entire world. I mean, Germany had already been in a fucking depression for years. And, I mean, war is money. War makes a lot of money. And it's also what makes America the superpower that it eventually becomes, because America really didn't have any Air Force to speak of. The military presence that America you know, had and carried after World War II didn't exist before World War II started. And Roosevelt commissioned, you know, that 100,000 planes be built, and everybody's like, "What, are you fucking crazy?" And he actually did it, right? So, so we came to the conclusion that, hey, man, if it wasn't for Hitler, the world would have been fucked up, man. Hitler got everybody out of the depression. I know, hot take. Let's see. What other comments do we have here? Only a suspicious man would wear regular clothing. That one didn't make sense to me when the guy was investigating the Nazis and he's like, man, this guy looks mad suspicious. Why? Why do you think that? He's wearing civilian clothes. Okay. That's it? Yeah. All right, go with it. It's crazy that some people still believe he escaped to Argentina. My Polish neighbor is one of them. Yeah, there are a lot of people who do believe that Hitler did end up escaping to Argentina, because some high-ranking Nazis did manage to make it to Argentina. Eichmann being the most famous one. Eventually, Eichmann is captured and stands trial for his war crimes. So, yeah, I mean, you know, there's always going to be conspiracy theories about various things. Let's see. I know teach, but Miss Steigler had some more words to the band. All right, man, whatever, man. Let's see. If you really want that done, you know, you could always drop a donation or become a Patreon, and then I'll do it. Otherwise, like I said, I already did it. My history teacher believes that he did. I mean, look, I'm always of the opinion that nothing's set in stone. Is it possible? Of course it's possible. Is it likely? Not really. But look, man, anything's possible. Even, you know, people, you know, gave me a little bit of shit for my my Kennedy assassination video and the opinions I had. And I said in the video, these are just my opinions based upon, you know, my readings, hearing about all the conspiracy theories for the past 40 some odd years, having every student who comes of age in junior high school, you know, they find out about the Kennedy assassination and all of a sudden they become fucking experts on everything. And, you know, but yeah, like U35 said, it's a fun conspiracy theory, and that's what conspiracy theories really are. They're just fun conversation starters. Whether they're true or not, that's a different story, but they do get the conversation started. The Israeli secret Mossad service would have found him. Most likely, I do agree with that. The Mossad probably would have found him because, again, anybody who was anybody who did make it out, the Mossad eventually do find. There was a very good movie about that, starring Ben Kingsley. How they found Eichmann in Argentina. I don't remember the name of the movie, but I do remember Ben Kingsley plays Eichmann, so you could probably find that on IMDb. And of course, the other great movie that it covers the Mossad is Munich, which was directed by Steven Spielberg. Very underrated Steven Spielberg movie. When it came out, I mean, it was kind of a mixed bag. I don't know why. I thought it was an excellent movie. An amazing cast. Eric Bana, Daniel Craig. I mean, really, really great cast. Of course, Spielberg directing it. I think maybe people at that point were kind of like, all right, Spielberg, enough World War II shit, enough, Jewish diaspora shit. So maybe that was it, but it's an excellent movie. It basically covers what happens after the 1972 Munich Olympics, where the Israeli Olympians were murdered by terrorists, and then basically how what the fuck was the prime minister's name? What was her name? Shit, I forgot. The shit. How could I forget her name? But Golda Meir. Golda Meir. Golda Meir basically green lights a unit of special forces to hunt down the people who are responsible for it. So yeah, you definitely don't want to fuck with the Mossad. Tigerius, yeah, I agree. Very underrated movie. I really don't know what happened that year, but Munich, absolutely a fantastic movie. Definitely a hard watch, kind of like, in the vein of a Schindler's List. But again, very good movie that covers the topic of the Munich Olympics. Which actually I think I want to do a video on, because again, that's another thing that really doesn't get talked about a lot, and I'm surprised when I do mention it how many people have no clue what the fuck I'm talking about, even though it happened in the 70s, but for me, somebody who was born in the 70s, it doesn't seem like that long ago, even though it was. I mean, we're talking almost 50 years ago, Jesus. Some suggested we watch that movie in class, and a few other. Yeah, that's definitely not a movie for high school. I remember they did show it. No, I was in college when they showed a Schindler's List. And again, the teacher actually said, if you want to skip out on class, you could do that. But because I was in college, it was my freshman year, which was 94, and I know the movie came out in 93, I believe. So it was very, very soon after it came out on VHS. Yes, we're going back that far. We did watch Schindler's List in my class. It was a World War II class, but that was college. I would definitely, and Munich is much more. I mean, of course, the topic is not light for Schindler's List, but I'm saying Munich is a little more violent, I think, and the subject matter is very adult-like. And there's a whole bunch of sex scenes in it, too. Well, then again, there's... whatever. Anyway, you get my point. Let's see. Wings of Shoe. Perhaps cover the Stockholm Syndrome origin situation. That's quite interesting. There's a lot of cases of Stockholm Syndrome, which, yeah, that could be something interesting to cover. Or how about the RAF, Red Army, Fraketen would be a good topic, I guess. Left terror in Germany. Yeah, like that's what I'm talking about. I like covering stuff again that really doesn't get covered either on YouTube or in history class. Devil Blight just ended 12 years of military service. Been subbed to you for a bit. Just wanted to say hi. Well, number one, thank you so much for your service, Devil Blight. 69. I just like the 69 part. Yeah, that's what she said. But thank you for your service, and thank you for being subbed. And hello to you too, sir. I saw that movie in high school. Which one? Mr. Lizard. Mr. Lizard. Why is that familiar? Oh, I'm thinking of Jim Morrison, the Lizard King. But yeah, Stockholm Syndrome does have an interesting origin, absolutely. But yeah, I definitely recommend, and I'm still surprised how many people haven't even seen Schindler's List. But I can understand it. I mean, I guess I'm a little more desensitized to that because it's something, I grew up on. As I mentioned many times, my grandmother, God rest her soul, she passed away 6 years ago, 2015 in May. She was almost 80 years old. She was born in 1935, and they lived in Russia at the time. My family moved to the United States a few years before I was born in the 70s. But she lived through the entire war, and her father died on the front. He was very, very young. I think he was in his late 20s, like 26, 28. His name was Jacob, which is why my son is named Jacob. When I was a little kid, because me and my grandmother were so close, I promised her that if I ever had a son, I would name it after her father, who passed, unfortunately, at a young age on the front, and she really didn't get to know him or remember him much. But it was really just her and a few members of her family, and again, the horrors that she had to witness as a child, and then even after the war. It's how do you put it? It kind of puts things in perspective for you. When people say, "Oh man, 2020 is the worst year ever," and like Spanish influenza is like, "Yo man, hold my millions of deaths," and people who had to live through the famine in Russia during World War II are like, "Man, hold my grumbling stomach, man, while I pickle my children and eat them." Yeah, those were some of the stories that I had to hear. So yeah, it's a long explanation for, I guess, why I'm more desensitized to some of the things, and also growing up and seeing a lot of the footage from the concentration camps, which they used to just show on like network television all the time when they would do specials. Now people are more sensitive to these type of things because thankfully nothing on that grand a scale has happened within this generation or the previous generation since then. I mean, there have been like the ethnic cleansing under Milosevic, of course, the genocides in Africa, these terrible things still happen around the world. It's not like they're just in the past, which is again why I always say, just to dismiss somebody like Hitler as a lunatic. This is not somebody who overthrew his government to come into power. This is a man who organized, who got elected. Did he strong arm? Of course he did, but he got in through democratically elected process. They never held a majority. There's so many misconceptions about World War II, and again, that's what I try to correct when I do these types of videos. But I see no more questions coming in. Again, big, huge thanks to my man John Alonzo. I love you, bruh. And absolutely love your comments as well. And really kind of cool that you remember me from back in the day with the Opie and Anthony thing. Thank you as well to Atticus Finch for the super chat. You guys really just made my night with that. And it really helps. Anyway, I've been Teacher Ready, fam. I'll see you in the next video. And again, thank you so much for all the support. I love you. And have a good night.